Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SP Reviews where today we're going to be checking out some tracks off of an album titled Rebirth from a band named Izeovasis. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves the album on Spotify. We're going to be listening through two of these tracks today off of the album. A tweaker stole my phone charger and May We Meet Again. So we're going to listen through each of these tracks from start to finish. We're going to hear what we think. Let's go. It's been a while since I reviewed music like this and I thoroughly enjoy it. So let's just talk about what we've had so far. Changes in grooves, half time to normal time or even double time. Lots of fluidity and technicality within those drum beats. The guitar riffs are fascinating and interesting. Really gritty vocal fry there, and the bass just lining everything up really sweetly. It's dope, man. Shrieks and growls. I mean, it's absolutely chaotic. And back. Okay, so we're repeating motifs. It's just absolutely vitriolic. It's vicious. The tone of it is absolute chaos. I think they're talking about someone who's just like a drug addict and a complete pain in the ass to deal with, and they're talking about how they're a waste of space and like becoming a better man, etc. Like basically challenging them not to be a complete waste of humanity, I suppose. It's brutal, dude. But I dig it. I like the technicality of the performance instrumentally, it's fantastic. And the vocals are the icing on the cake. Those slow bends are just to die for, man. I mean, that requires phenomenal vocal technique. I mean, like, to be clear, for people who are not familiar with how you do the growls and the shrieks and all that, it's not just screaming as hard as you can into a microphone. It requires really conscious awareness. Like, you have to really warm up your throat and stuff like that, and you have to polish that technique for a really long time to be able to get it to sound good. And also in a way that's sustainable, because if you don't have really good kind of vocal fry technique, if you're not able to growl and shriek without relying on like your throat for the most part, you can really stuff yourself up, it can really do damage to your vocal cords. So for that to be that ferocity, that tighter performance as well, the way those instruments play together, very complicated riffs and different chops and such. changes between pace, etc. But for there to be not a note out of place is wonderful. And I think it really is it's just basically this person is just thoroughly inconsequential that they're talking about. The tweaker stole my phone charger is more than that. It's kind of like a light version of how they truly feel about that person. They've done more than that for sure. But cool stuff. Great first impression to the band. You get, death metal. It's fantastic. And I like that people are doing more and more with it these days. Just before we go any further, I should note that track featured Guy Kozowik. So Guy Kozowik, that would have been in the title card for the song. But just while I'm here, this track, A Tweaker Stole My Phone Charger, featured Guy Kozowik. And this next one, When We Meet Again, it features Jess Leandro. So Leandro, let's continue with track number 2 for today. Great filtering there, but all oh, it's ferocious. I love it. I mean, like, the heaviness of that is like star matter crashing into the earth. That's ridiculous. Just how it hits you. It's such a immense riff. And just into blast beats now, Thoroughly spoiled. Great use of a sub drop there. Can we just pause and appreciate how ridiculous this would be live? Wouldn't it be? It'd be dope, man. I'd be keen to see these guys live, eh? That's what an album needs to do, It needs to incentivize you to hear more of it. And just the discordant nature of those melodic riffs, there was those flat seconds and tritones, it's vile. But they managed to make it musical, and that requires a sufficient amount of talent. I mean, this is a hell of a way to spend a Monday, if I'm honest. I dig it. Oh, fantastic. Again, I love those sub drops. Great leveling there in the mix. Oh, damn. I'll be honest, be happily listening through this whole album outside of this review, eh? This is a good enough album for that. We're going to do the conclusion now, though. Because this is the conclusion of my review of these couple of tracks off this album, Rebirth, by Izeovasis, with A Tweaker Stole My Phone Charger by Izeovasis and featuring Guy Kozowik, as well as May We Meet Again with Izeovasis and Jess Leandro. I think to talk about what this album is about, I mean, I've got two parts of a greater concept here. I've talked about what a tweaker stole my phone charger is about, and maybe we'll meet again. Now, the parts I caught fairly clearly were like, maybe we'll meet again in another dimension, etc. So maybe it's like, how do I describe it? Maybe they met on a spiritual level, or like they wanted another chance at something with someone, and they know that in this lifetime they're never going to get there. Maybe conceptually, spiritually, philosophically, whatever, they're going to get there with that other person. They hope for another chance, effectively. That's kind of what I'm getting at there. I think there was a bit more context to it that I might have missed earlier on in the track, because I was basically vibing so hard with all the guitar, bass, drum parts, etc., as well as some of the little synth parts and pads, etc. There were so many different cool instruments within this tracks that I've heard so far, but let's just pause for a moment, because I think with those stories in mind, I think this track is about different concepts. Maybe the person's aware of their current state of their life and their place in the universe, and it's just talking about from their current state and getting to somewhere else where things are better, I suppose. I don't, that's my best take on it so far. Again, I'd need more time with the rest of the album to really figure that out, but that's my take so far for these two tracks. The vocals on this were phenomenal. I'm really happy with the fact that we predominantly stuck to the growls and the shrieks, because I think that they worked with the colorful, just completely almost, it makes you almost incredulous just how wild everything was. The growls and shrieks are non-melodic typically, and they just work so well as a way of cutting through the mix, and the presence there is fantastic. The production on them was great, the vocal technique as well from the various performers involved in that respect, and I think they eloquently, I know it may be a weird word, but I think they did communicate the messages they wanted to in a way that was appropriate. I mean, a tweaker stole my phone charger, that the aggression there makes a lot of sense. May we Meet Again, it sounds like they're angry and frustrated that they didn't get it right the first time, and so maybe the second time they'll have another go and it'll be better. That's kind of what I took from that. So the style of performance matches well, I think, with the story from what I can gather. So in effect, because they're also displaying really competent vocal technique, and because it works well for the genre that we're listening to, I think that the vocals are fantastic, and the story is too. And I have to also give them a shout out for actually making the words like in a way that I can understand them, because you can't always understand the words that are being said within this genre. Sometimes the growls are just it's more noise than, like you can't hear the words as clearly. So I'm glad that you could hear them well on this one. I think that's great. The tracks were typically about 2 to 3 minutes in length. I can see that across the album with a few exceptions, some of them being shorter than a minute, some of them being near closer to 4. I think there's a great lengths for tracks nowadays. I think that especially if you're a band that is, releasing an album, you need the person to want to listen through your album as a whole. And I want to give a shout out to the end of May We Meet Again, because it flowed really nicely into Going Bear Shakedown, the next track. And I could hear at the end of May We Meet Again that we were going into a new song, and I wanted to hear more of it because it was so bright and colorful after just the fury that we had in May We Meet Again. But obviously, I couldn't do that because we're doing a review of the two tracks. But do you know what I mean? It makes me want to hear more. So I think that in effect was very effective. In addition to that, the tracks were wonderfully textured with a lot of different riffs, drum chops, etc. The guitars were frenetic. They were so well played. I mean, the riffs flowed well between each other, the different sections of the track. And as far as I can tell, they were true composed. I don't think we necessarily had verses and choruses. If we did, then it just sounded like we were going on a journey regardless. And that's something that I need even from a lot of songs that are far more conservative and contemporary with their approach to composition and songwriting. I need to feel like it's not just rinse and repeat, copy and paste. And we didn't get that with this band. There were, the drum chops with the wild kind of blast beats, the breakdown, slowing right down, the galloping and such with the ridiculous, the intensely complicated and simultaneously satisfying fills. The chops, they were great. The drummer absolutely nailed it. There was not a note out of place there, I don't think. The bass line was fairly subtle for the most part. I mean, I'm pretty sure the bass line was pretty supportive of the chord progressions and root notes and etc. And that behaved really well in the mix. It was a great support alongside the drums to what was going on with the rhythm and lead guitars. And we didn't really necessarily have lead guitars per se. I think we had double track guitars which went between really kind of heavy down tuned power chord kind of chugged parts. And then we just had maybe some open chords, kind of strummed, distorted bits, with just crazy chicanery going on with like the hammer-ons and pull-offs, twisty bits going on there between the mid strings, and it's just sensational how well that contrasted and therefore behaved. It coupled so well with the vocals. We had such a great sense of creativity with these different concepts that flowed well within each other, and they were in a shorter form factor. So by virtue of that, there were really no weak points. In addition to some more colorful synth, maybe some pad parts, etc., maybe some keys, etc., like we had a few other elements of sub layers there that were fantastic because they add a little bit more sort of depth to it. You don't need everything the same loudness in a track. You don't need everything to have center stage. And while the vocals were the focal point, it was nice to have things darting around the stereo field and keeping you interested. I think that the tracks, there was absolutely no filler within them. There was dynamic range as well. It wasn't the same loudness the whole time. We had shifts in energy levels despite the intensity that was basically throughout. I was together really happy with these two tracks. They were really well done. I don't think we needed any sort of lead elements there because the vocals were charismatic and in your face, and I think the coupling of them with featured artists was good because you had different vocal textures in there to go between. So yeah, really great music. I think that finally the studio recording, mixing and mastering was really well done. I'm really satisfied with how they worked out. I think that there's nothing really that they need to improve there. I think they smashed it out of the park with what was going on with the the vocals were well EQ'd and compressed, and they were present in the mix. You didn't want to soak them in effects chains because it would have just been too much. It would have sounded too floaty, and you needed them to kind of be a bit more hard and raw. The drums were nicely filtered and balanced there and cut into the mix without being too much. And I think the bass line was well sort of kept in place by the drums, but also like filled the low end really well. The guitars were balancing on top of everything else and kind of cutting into the stereo field, whilst being well notched into the frequency spectrum. So they suited well regardless of whether they're on the low or the high strings. The other synth, piano parts, etc., any other sort of bits of foley in the background were great. There were bass drops as well occasionally, especially in Maybe We Meet Again, should I say. That just went so well leveled that it's boom, you got that warm at the end, but it wasn't too much. And I think that's a real problem with sometimes when I listen to metal, is that the bass drops are just too much. And I know it seems ridiculous, right? But like it's too prominent. It kind of takes you out of the flow of the track with its intensity, if that makes sense. Like boom. It's just a little bit too much. You focus on it, and then maybe you miss a vocal line or something like that, and it's just a shame. I think there were no resonant frequencies in the frequency spectrum, so it was well balanced there. Nice and wide stereo field, lots of activity around the headphones and speakers, and it was nice and without pumping, with dynamic range to boot. And like, this is my review of the album Rebirth by Izeovasis with the two tracks we heard today. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go check out the various social medias and the Spotify page and stay cool. Stay safe. Please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they either help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world, and I'll catch you in the next review. Spiderhands out.